those of you watching this video, you must be thinking one of two things. Either, holy shit, Baron finally uploaded, or who is this smug cunt, and what does he have to say? Well, ladies, and presumably mostly gentlemen, if you didn't read the title, I would like to make some statements on traditionalism and the traditionalist movement, primarily aimed at a more liberally minded viewer. Quick aside before I go in, this is my first video on my new laptop, and my first with a proper mic, so please let me know if there's a significant improvement or if there's any problem, any background noise or anything like that. Thank you. So, firstly, I'd like to address something, and that is the tendency of promoters and detractors of traditionalism to mostly focus on the aesthetic, particularly that of the 1950s in America. As I, and many of the big brains in this community see it, the 50s were more of a mask put on by a consumerist society, afraid of communism and radicalism in general. Behind the picket fences and the kids playing catch in the front lawn, you had McCarthyism, the war in Korea, encouragement of wife beating, things like that, and a kind of generally artificial and very kind of unfettered capitalistic atmosphere. And although it's nice, and although I understand why a lot of people strive for that, because it is attractive, even if it is somewhat put on, there is a much deeper goal to our movement than just focusing on this aesthetic, this vision. It's kind of more of a nostalgia for a time when you weren't even really alive. So many people who seek this have not even lived the reality, because people who have lived the reality are boomers, and nobody likes boomers. Sorry, I went off a little bit. And kind of in our modern time, many notice kind of a difference that leads them to look back on things like this, and that is the kind of destruction of community, of family, of common good, if you will, because of the growth of things like sort of like nihilism and secularism, and things that kind of push the individual ahead of the rest of society. And before Sargonites and people like that kind of say like, oh, you're a collectivist, you fucking shitlord. Well, I think that there can be definitely a balance between individual and community. I think the individual is really important, because communities can't exist without individuals, with individual wants and needs. But the thing that makes this toxic in many cases is when people put themselves first at the expense of their community, when they view the community as just a hindrance to their own desires, when they kind of want to throw away what they view as the shackles of the society that they live in. Insert Joker meme here. It kind of, in some ways, kind of sets us back. It makes us kind of have this almost artificial dichotomy between individual and community, when I think the two can and should live alongside each other, because a fulfilled individual makes for a fulfilled community. I think that there's a lot of problems in our society, especially having to do with this rejection of community values and sort of common interest. And I think that the secular liberals, the skeptics, don't really have an answer for this, because at the end of the day, most of them view morality as subjective. But what exactly does this accomplish? It doesn't give you the teeth to tell people you view as hostile to your community, hey, that's bad. Because what argument do you have that it's bad other than you just feel that way? Which, I don't want to sound like Ben Shapiro, like I'm saying, hey, facts don't care about your feeling, folks. Okay, folks? But it really is kind of in that way, because what you're saying is that you think people should conform to your society just because you want them to. There's no underlying transcendent truth to the idea that these are the morals that people should have, because who are you to tell them what is and is not moral if you yourself have no underlying morals to your ideas, other than just what you feel like there should be. And I ask you, if you're of this mindset, watching, where do you get the values that you want to see in society? What is your plan for reforming things like affirmative action, these kind of things? What is your underlying argument against any of these things that you seem so in opposition to? If you advocate for constitutionalism, which a lot of classical liberals do, and I do as well, what exactly backs up the ideas in the Constitution, whether you have one that you like or if you want one that is more protective of your personal freedoms. What are the underlying reasons for these ideas? Where do you derive them? For people in our movement, we derive them from what we see to be kind of the underlying truths, the underlying morals of the world. These are universal ideas that are completely independent of law, and we rather think law should be based on them rather than the other way around. Because when you have laws that are just based on what you want, it gives nobody a true reason to follow them other than just fear of being punished. If there are also people out here who are kind of the secularist school of thought, and if you see these things as a problem, which I would assume most people do, what would your solution be for social ills such as low birth rates or low marriage success, high suicide rates, crime, and things such as this? What exactly is your plan to fix these things? Because I think you can fix these things by encouraging sort of a common morality, a feeling of belonging in people, a community values among people. And what exactly does secular liberalism have in the way to kind of bring people out of this, bring society, I should say, out of this kind of dark place that it's in at the moment? Traditionalism doesn't just have benefits in the way of society as a whole, because I think, especially for me, because I had to go through this myself, there is definitely a lot that it can do for the individual. Because when you start to feel these moral imperatives on you, you start to view the world in this kind of more absolute understanding. It more than just brings comfort, it brings a high level of encouragement to do what's right. These ideas of absolute morality and universals between all people, it really benefits not only the people around you, but you yourself. And I encourage anybody here who hasn't really gone into these things to read on philosophy and theology and things like this. And I really hope this kind of ramble, even though I'm not exactly sure if I touched on everything I wanted to, I really hope I at least kind of introduce to you some things that might change your mind or might give you sort of a different. For those of you who already think like this, I just hope that I kind of entertained you with this and that you think I did a good job in trying to advocate for it. So stay tuned for the next video. I'm going to try this time to make sure it comes out way sooner, and see ya.